Good evening, everybody. Today we've got Asad Umar with us. He needs no introduction. He is the former General Secretary of PTI and the former CEO of Engro. I'm sorry to disappoint PTI fans. This podcast will not be focusing around politics, but rather the structural problems of Pakistan and the different problems that businesses face in Pakistan, and a bit about Asad Umar's professional career. So I wanted to ask you how your sort of career was at Engro and what you liked about it, some challenges that you had at Engro.
So I started off actually after graduating from IBA at HSBC. For a few months, I found banking to be boring. I'm sorry, bankers, but it's changed a lot. Banking has changed a lot since then. Moved to Exxon Chemical Pakistan, as it was at that point in time. Got transferred a few years later to ExxonMobil Canada. I worked there. But then the really exciting thing happened. There was a buyout of Exxon operation in Pakistan. It was the first management-led buyout in Pakistan. I was in Canada, so I had nothing to do with it. But when I came back, I was working for this unique company, which was neither a multinational, nor a government-owned enterprise, nor a state-controlled company. It was led by professionals, and that made it a very exciting place and did a lot of very interesting stuff. The company expanded, diversified. So overall, a really, really fulfilling career, rewarding career. And some of the finest professionals in Pakistan were working there. So that environment, working with such high quality people, you really learned, you grew, and you developed working with people like that.
So what were some of the biggest bottlenecks that you faced working in Pakistan?
That's the prime reason in the end that I did agree to Imran Khan, who had been saying again and again and again that you need to come and join us. As he would put it, Pakistan needs you. We realized that the political system and therefore the governance structure is the biggest bottleneck for development of business in Pakistan. So yeah, there are some inherent challenges like insufficient skilled manpower, etc. The quality of the infrastructure it's improved over the years, but still not world class. So there are those things, but more than anything else, it's the governance structure, the policy dysfunction of the governance system of Pakistan, which is the biggest bottleneck.
So, for example, there's a huge sort of lack of competitiveness, I would say, in terms of Pakistani companies when it comes to exports. So, what do you think are some ways that Pakistan can improve its export competitiveness?
That's coming from what you reward, right? People are generally rational beings, and the famous Pavlovian dog. So people respond to incentives. The incentive in Pakistan's business right now is who has got the best connections in Q Block, which is the finance ministry, or the PM office, or the secretariat in general, or if it is a military government, then who's got the best contacts there. And it is not those who are the best at innovation, at risk taking. So competitive firms are not developing. It's not just exports. You cannot have an inefficient economy in which there is a thriving export sector. The overall productivity of the economy is low, and because success is not determined by your competitiveness, success is determined by how well you use your contacts and which wheel are you willing to grease, and that's the reason you're not producing world-class companies.
So, how much of these? So, you just alluded to one of the aspects that I sort of was thinking of, which is in terms of the bureaucracy, right? So, there are a lot of these sort of bureaucratic bottlenecks. For example, registering a company in Pakistan can take multiple weeks, whereas if you were to register one in the United Kingdom, it would take at max 2 working days, for example. So those are some of the sort of things like, so what are these bottlenecks more specifically in industries such as, for example, the textile industry, um, and how can we sort of improve our competitiveness there?
It's these are all well-known things. The FBR, the tax system. If you ask the textile guys, refunds is one of the most important issues for them. It is the very weak legal infrastructure. So contract disputes do not get settled. Uh, the government of Pakistan repeatedly reneges on its contractual commitments. So the sovereign is not kind of living by the rules of the game or following the law, and that sets the bad tone. So it's endemic. It's across the board. It's the low quality of the bureaucratic system. Over the years, it's declined. I've seen. I started dealing with the bureaucracy around 1990, and you had some really high quality bureaucrats there. There's some still there who are very, very good, but by and large, there has been a very tangible, visible decline in the quality of the bureaucracy. So it goes to structure, it goes to political interference, and one of the key reasons why the quality of the bureaucracy has declined is that politicians have used the bureaucracy for promoting their own ends. And again, the same thing comes in. If that's what's going to get you the reward, it's the bureaucrats who are best at doing that who will rise to the top, rather than the ones who are the best.
Okay. So again, it's the incentive structure that
Yeah.
you just mentioned. So some of the other problems that Pakistan is facing are sort of, I'm not exactly sure about the exact figures, but I believe we also import wheat at times. We also import sugar. So for a country of an estimated now 240 million people, um, what are some of the things that can be done to solve sort of the food, not shortage, but the issue of having to import food with a very fast growing population?
First of all, it's 250 million, not 240 million.
Okay.
We grow fast.
Yes.
We are world class at producing babies.
Yes.
But to begin with, you don't have to be self-sufficient. This is
Okay.
I won't even say it's an outdated theory, because 200 years back, economists were talking about competitive advantage, and you should focus on what you are most productive at. For example, Pakistan doesn't usually import sugar, but maybe it should, because the endowments for producing sugarcane in Pakistan are not that great. You've got low yields, low sucrose content, etc., etc. The reason why the productivity growth has lagged, because if you start from around 1960 and go forward another 30, 35 years, you'll see quadrupling of production of rice, sugarcane, wheat, all the major crops. And that was driven out of what? First, a remarkably improved water supply system with Tarbela Dam and Mangla Dam, and then the barrages being built, the new barrages, the new canals being built. So water supply dramatically improved. Introduction of seed technology, the famous Mexipack seed for wheat and Iri rice. And similarly for cotton, some of them locally developed. Nayab seed, Nayab 57, I think it was called. That was a big boost for cotton. So we stopped building dams. We did not invest enough in the water distribution infrastructure to keep it efficient, let alone to expand it. So we have the potential of expanding that by at least 12 million acre feet. We stopped investing in research. So we stopped developing new seeds. Agriculture also got starved of credits. So for multiple reasons, your productivity growth stalled. And population, as we said, we are world class at babies. So you are in a position now where many of the edibles are now imported.
And can that lead to problems in the future, considering we already
Will
have
they start starving? No, I don't think so. I don't think so. And as I said, you don't have to be self-sufficient in everything. We are more or less self-sufficient in wheat. We are a bit short. The problem in recent years has been the price in Pakistan has been lower than the international price. So there's been a lot of smuggling out of Pakistan. So otherwise, we are more or less self-sufficient in wheat. We are major exporters of rice. We have been self-sufficient in sugarcane. There has been a very strong growth in maize production locally, etc., etc. So I don't think you're going to have any issues of lack of food supply, but there is a lost opportunity because from the same crops, from the same land, from the same factor inputs, we could be getting much better yields than we're getting right now.
Okay, that's a very interesting take. And what about other industrial sectors, such as, for example, the car industry, right? Recently, I don't know, a few months back, there were certain announcements about certain car companies taking a pause with production and issues like that. So, and as far as I know, Pakistan mainly assembles cars, but what sort of issues are there and are prevalent within the car industry, and how can Pakistan sort of
Well,
get into
I'm
that?
not a sector expert, so I
Okay.
can't tell you
Yeah.
exactly what the issues faced by the car industry are. The short-term pause that you were talking about is not related to the car industry itself. It's the macroeconomic condition. There is just lack of demand. Credit has become very, very expensive, and there's a very strong correlation between credit offtake for consumer finance for cars and the growth of the car industry. So those are macro issues which are affecting this industry. But otherwise, specifically, I'm not an expert at the auto industry.
Okay. So in terms of Pakistan's exports and imports, so current account deficit, we have been running them for many years in a row, and currently Pakistan may or may not, I'm not an economist, FYI, be running towards a default. How likely do you think a default is for Pakistan in the current situation?
Well, first of all, we have not defaulted on our external debt obligations, but we are constantly defaulting for the last 14 months on our external obligations other than debt payments. Uh, Dividend payments have been withheld, royalty payments have been withheld, service providers payments have been withheld, and that backlog has now risen to several billion dollars. So, so as far as external obligations are concerned, we are constantly in default these days, but we have not defaulted on the debt payments that we owe abroad. And even those are a real risk. Number of the leading credit agencies in the world have been flashing warning signs for Pakistan. The reserves right now less than $4 billion. 15 months back, there was $16 billion. So there are just less than one fourth of the reserves that were there 15 months back. These are about as low a reserve as Pakistan has ever had. And still no IMF agreement in sight. So the risk of default is very real. Uh, Whether we will default or not will depend on the decisions we make.
So, assuming, let us say that the nightmare scenario does occur, what are sort of the consequences for Pakistan, sort of the federal government? And so that's one aspect of it. And then the other aspect of it would be the common man, the average person, because there's already a lot of inflation. People are already facing quite a few difficulties with, I believe, around 40% inflation currently. So, yeah, that would be the question.
So the first and the most obvious impact, of course, is the pressure on the rupee. And as Pakistan has a significant dependence on imports, so every time the rupee devalues, it feeds inflation. So that would be the first and most foremost impact. The second thing is you will get capital starved. So you will only be able to afford the imports to the extent that you have export receipts in your hand or remittances in your hand, which means that you will start running short of some essentials also. Like we're heavily dependent on fuel. The largest single import item in Pakistan is fuel supply. So you could see fuel shortages in the country. Uh, Even our beloved mash ki dal is imported from Australia. So daily edibles, edible oil is mostly imported, etc. So energy, food, these things will have a price impact and there could be supply impacts also. So this is clearly raw materials for pharmaceuticals. So you could have drug shortages in the country, as you already experienced, because in order to avoid a default, they strangulated the economy in the last 1 year. They made imports very, very difficult. And I still remember I was here in F10 Markaz, and I came out of the shop and I met some guy who was in the pharma business, and he said, our raw materials, LCs are not being honored. And you knew, sure enough, 3 months later, we started hearing of drug shortages. Obviously, if there is no raw material, how do they produce? So the consequences will be very, very, very serious.
So we're talking about potentially fuel shortages, what's it called, drug shortages, and other kinds of shortages, and high levels of inflation for the Commonwealth. Okay. So let's say that has happened. What should then be the way forward? Worst case scenario.
That doesn't make any sense at all. Why would you make it happen
then try? No. But
the question is, what should be done to avoid that?
Okay, both. So my question would be
I refuse to answer that question, because that means that you have decided to be absolutely insane. So you are saying once you have gone insane, how do you then become sane again? So no. It's entirely in your hands. It's entirely in your hands. You need to take decisions right now, because you have delayed the decision to a point where you have taken it so close to the elections. Now you can't take the decision of an IMF agreement, because that would be negative for them in terms of elections. I don't know why they're worried about that, because their vote bank is already decimated. So they hardly have any voters left. I don't know what they're worried about. But that's the thing. The thing is, you have to finalize the IMF agreement immediately without wasting a single day.
Okay. But I'm not trying to push you, but let us say that doesn't happen.
So then there is no... it's not... The question is not rational. Because what you are saying is we will continue to be irrational to the point of insanity. But the moment we have gone insane, from that point onwards, how do we recover to sanity? It doesn't make any sense. You get my point? So if you go down that route, you will not recover. Because you've chosen to do that, right? It's like saying, after you have committed suicide, how do you revive yourself? Right? You committed suicide. So there is no revival after that.
So as somebody who works in let's now go towards, for example, the IT industry. So one thing I've noticed is actually, so I'm working in the IT industry, specifically in the cloud industry. And it's booming a lot in Europe, in the US, even probably in developed East Asia. And now I think it's even starting to go towards the Middle East, such as Saudi Arabia and UAE and other countries as well. And you see there are like thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of jobs which are being produced around the globe, which are very high value jobs. Now, the thing is, I look at that as such a huge opportunity for Pakistan, right? Like being a potential source of a potential outsourcing destination. So what sort of policies can Pakistan enact or introduce, or what to essentially increase IT exports and become a hub of IT, outsourcing?
Okay, so what's your competitive advantage? Low-cost manpower, right? So if that low-cost manpower had the appropriate skills, boom, you will be competitive. We had run a Skills for All program, which had a high-tech component to it, and there were 170,000 skills training in things like artificial intelligence, etc., etc. So that program was being committed. So starting from July of 2022, the previous year, I had asked them, this meeting was February. I chaired that meeting and I told these guys, come back to me with a proposal in the next 1 month for doing 1 million trainings in those higher order skills within 3 years. And that's what you need to do.
Yes.
You need to heavily invest in the skills training of these of the youth. They're talented, like anywhere else in the world. They're very low cost. With the devals that have taken place, the wage rates are now very, very competitive. And that's the single most important thing. The missing link right now is the principal missing link. That's not the only missing link. The principal missing link is you just are not training people in the appropriate skills.
Okay. Now I want to go towards, for example, the electricity and gas crisis. So Pakistan has, for many years, been suffering from an electricity and gas crisis. So what are some of the, like, so for example, I don't know exactly what the root causes are. So what are the root causes of this? And previously, I'm not very well versed with how it worked before, but I believe that all the discos were sort of one prior to a proposal by the World Bank to split them up. And prior to that, I think that Pakistan had fewer sort of electricity issues. So could you sort of comment on?
Yeah, that's not the reason why we are in the that period. The principal source, the root cause of all the problems, strangulation of the energy markets by the state, by the government. Everything in the gas and electricity sector is controlled by the babus and the politicians. And that has destroyed, absolutely wrecked the energy markets, both gas and electricity. So these single most important thing, get the government out of this, get the market to work. And these are initiatives which were started, should have been implemented by now, had been taken to an advanced stage. For example, in electricity, developing a wheeling market. Wheeling is simply producer A has surplus of energy, consumer B is sitting in a different location. There is a grid available in the middle, and you create, it's like anybody can drive on a motorway, you just pay a fee and you drive. So same concept for electricity, which automatically immediately creates competition. Right now, all the electricity markets are monopoly markets. The licenses are of monopoly, all distribution companies. So you cannot come to Islamabad and start selling electricity, only ISCO can do that. The moment you start wheeling, you already started with the initial steps of the competitive market. The second, more comprehensive reform is very long name, CTBCM, competitive, technical, bilateral, competitive trading bilateral contract markets. And that was supposed to be already implemented in 2023. The first phase of that, which is 1 megawatt and above. So why is the private sector efficient? Because it has to compete. So if you give a private sector guy an IPP type structure where there is no competition required, that's even more costly than the government doing it, because now the private sector profits are added on top of that. There is no competitive structure in the market. Similarly for gas, the fundamental reform required is weighted average cost of gas, WACOG as we call it. We had the legislation done. We worked with all the different provinces to try and bring them on board, and we got the legislation done. They still haven't implemented that. The moment you do WACOG, it's technical, so I'm not going to go into details, but the moment you do WACOG, you can open up the gas sector to private sector competition also. Let anybody who wants to put up LNG terminals, they put it up. No government guarantees, no taxpayers' neck on the line. Transmission companies you want to set up, you set it up. You go find your molecules, you go find your customer, you do the pricing. Like fruit is traded, like meat is traded. It's like that. It's the strangulation of the energy sector by the government which is the root cause of its problems.
So in terms of, and what about sort of these import opportunities from Iran and Turkmenistan? Can Pakistan...
That's no silver bullet.
No, oh,
that's no silver bullet.
No, not a silver bullet, but is that a potential sort of export opportunity for Pakistan where they can import it, liquefy it, and then export it across?
So what do you bring to the table which Iran can't do itself?
Iran's sanctioned.
They have more. They're exporting their energy products to around the world. They have better technical skills than you. They have far more financial resources than they do. So you bring that gas in, you transport that, and you add it. That's not a.
Okay. And what about so another major issue facing Pakistan is mass immigration. So a lot of Pakistanis are leaving the country, and I believe last year it reached around 800,000. How do you think we can retain skilled and semi-skilled labor, considering almost everybody I know my
There
age
are
is
two types of people going abroad, right? The labor who are going to work in the construction market, you cannot take his skills and export it, right? You don't export roads. But what you can do is you can create jobs in the textile sector and employ relatively lower skilled people in there, and then convert that into a textile product and export that. So one is setting up competitive export businesses which are significant in terms of their labor content, because that's Pakistan's competitive advantage. So that would be one way of absorbing this manpower. You keep it here, but still monetizing their skills or their hard work into dollars, which is what you do when you send them abroad for remittances. But maybe when he goes abroad, he sends in his $100. But if he made the product here, it would be $200 or $300 that you're getting. Then the other set is the knowledge worker. And that we've discussed earlier. That's the single biggest opportunity sitting here right now for Pakistan. And the world is becoming a more and more expensive place, and Pakistan is now one of the least cost countries in the world. You get them the right skills, and that skill set becomes available. Right now, the exodus is because the economy has crashed. And it's getting worse by the day. Each month, if you look at the slowdown is deepening, it's accelerating as you go by. There are no jobs. That's why everybody is looking for an opportunity abroad right now.
So I wanted to ask you what you think is better in terms of an economic model. So there's this sort of Singapore model which is very capitalistic. It has low taxes, versus the sort of Scandinavian model, which is also capitalist but a bit more socialist with high taxes.
It also depends on the stage of development of the economy, so you can't compare them directly. But in general, the Scandinavian model, which is more of a welfare state model, is something that appeals more to me. That's also consistent with the value system that we carry in the East. So it's also consistent with the teachings of the religion that we have. You have to take care of the weak. So that is morally the more attractive model to go. Obviously, in its application, you can have things which are sustainable, or as Scandinavia and many other parts of the world have realized that some of the policies that had been brought in are simply not sustainable. It makes it so expensive to operate that you lose competitiveness in the world and you just stagnate and start to decline.
Okay, we're now going to transition to asking about some questions about spirituality and some personal opinions of Asad Umar. So I wanted to ask you whether you think spirituality still has a role in the 21st century, considering a lot of scientists, etc., they believe that spirituality and religion has nothing to do in the modern world and the 21st century.
So the one obvious answer is faith-based, right? So, and obviously our faith makes us believe that this is what is right, and this is what's real, and this is what is ordained. But let's put on our rational hat. There's a lot of work which has happened recently on happiness. And if you look at those studies, you'll find out that happiness is not linked to material well-being. it is linked to a deeper meaning of life. It is linked to your relationship with society. It is linked to your belief system. And therefore, from a purely rational point of view, you can see that spirituality can lead to a much more fulfilling, a much more rewarding life, an enriched life. But of course, spirituality has also been taken, like any other good thing in the world, for causing immense amount of destruction. The difference in the theology between Protestants and Catholics to an outsider may seem trivial or very small, and for centuries they killed each other for those differences.
Okay, and my last question to you is, what do you think is the purpose of life?
People much smarter than me, much smarter than me, have spent their lifetimes trying to answer that question and not been able to do so. But to me, if you're able to leave the place that you got and the people that you had an opportunity to interact with, better off as a result of their interaction with you, better off as a result of you having been here, that's the purpose of life.
Thank you very much for coming on this show, and it has been an absolute honor to have somebody as esteemed as Asad Umar come on my show, and you're always welcome to come on again. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming on the show. This was the Intrastellar podcast with Shoaib Hussain. Please like, share, and subscribe, and click the notification button. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again.